Warrior feared as heartless. A woman believed to be a traitor. One moment of truth changes everything. Stay to see how a soul once thought lost begins to awaken. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you like the story and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The relentless sun beat down upon the Texas plains, scorching everything beneath its glare. Summer of 1874 had been particularly brutal in this unforgiving territory, where the borders between civilization and wilderness blurred. Dust devils danced across the horizon as a lone figure on horseback crested the ridge overlooking Miller's Creek settlement. Shadow Wolf, as the white settlers called him, observed the small collection of buildings with cold, calculating eyes. Among the Comanche, he was known as Taibu, the Sun Warrior, feared by enemies and respected by his own people. At 30 winters old, his face was etched with the harshness of a life spent in constant battle. "The woman with yellow hair lives there," he murmured to himself in his native tongue, focusing on a small cabin set apart from the others. His instructions from Chief Stone Bear were clear. Capture the woman who had nursed several wounded Comanche warriors back to health during a temporary truce, then killed 3 braves who had returned to thank her. Such treachery could not go unpunished. Taibu had volunteered for this mission, not only to serve his people but to quell the growing unease in his spirit. Lately, dreams had plagued him, visions of another life, another path. Such thoughts were dangerous. The elders said a warrior who questioned his purpose lost his power. He would complete this task and restore his standing among the tribe. As dusk approached, Taibu led his paint horse down toward the creek bed, finding a secluded spot to make camp. From here, he could watch the settlement while remaining hidden. The cabin's windows glowed with lamplight as darkness fell. Just before midnight, movement caught his eye. A slender figure emerged from the cabin, carrying what appeared to be a medical bag. The golden-haired woman walked with purpose toward another dwelling where a lantern flickered urgently in the window, the universal signal of sickness or birth. Curious, Taibu crept closer, moving like a shadow between buildings until he could peer through the window of the destination cabin. Inside, a man paced nervously while a woman lay on a bed, her face contorted in pain. "Thank the Lord you've come, Miss Catherine," the man said as the blonde woman entered. "The baby's coming early and Mary ain't doing well." "I'm here now, Thomas," the woman, Catherine, replied, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "Boil more water and bring clean cloths." For hours, Taibu watched as Catherine worked tirelessly to help the laboring woman. Her hands moved with skill and confidence. Her words offered comfort and strength. When the baby finally arrived just before dawn, its silence was deafening, until Catherine performed some manner of medicine that caused the tiny creature to draw breath and cry out. "You've saved them both, Miss Catherine," Thomas sobbed, clutching his wife's hand as she held their newborn son. The woman simply nodded, exhaustion evident in her slumped shoulders. "Keep them warm and comfortable. I'll return later today to check on them." As Catherine walked back toward her own cabin in the gray light of early morning, Taibu found himself conflicted. This healer did not match the description of a murderer. Either the stories were wrong, or this woman was skilled at deception. He would wait and observe further before taking action. 3 days passed as Taibu watched Catherine's movements. Each day she visited the sick, tended to injuries, and dispensed medicines from her stores. The settlers clearly respected her, bringing small gifts of food or supplies in exchange for her services. On the 4th day, a group of soldiers rode into the settlement. From his hiding place, Taibu tensed as they approached Catherine's cabin. The leader, a captain by his insignia, dismounted and removed his hat as Catherine emerged onto her small porch. "Miss Catherine," the captain said, his voice carrying across the distance, "we've come to discuss the incident with the savages last month." "There's nothing to discuss, Captain Reynolds," Catherine replied firmly. "I've already told Lieutenant Foster what happened." "The lieutenant's report was incomplete," the captain said. 3 dead Indians found near your property requires more explanation, especially with the treaty negotiations so delicate." Catherine's posture stiffened. "I was treating a family with fever east of here when it happened. I returned to find them dead near my cabin. I reported it immediately. Some say you lured them in, pretending to offer help. Then poison them, the captain pressed. It would be understandable after what happened to your family in the raid 2 years ago. I am a healer, Captain, Catherine said, her voice trembling slightly. I do not kill. Not whites, not Mexicans, not Indians. Now, unless you're arresting me, I have patients to attend to. The captain hesitated, then nodded curtly. We'll be stationed nearby for the next few weeks. The commander wants this settlement protected during treaty negotiations. After the soldiers departed, Catherine sat heavily on her porch steps, burying her face in her hands. For the first time, Taibu saw vulnerability in her bearing. Something about the captain's words had struck deep. That night, as Taibu contemplated the new information, a commotion from the direction of the saloon caught his attention. 3 riders, clearly drunk, were heading toward Catherine's cabin, laughing loudly. Time to teach that Indian lover a lesson, one called out. My brother died because of her sympathies. Taibu's hand moved to his knife, his body tensing. He had come to capture this woman for his people's justice, not to witness her murder by drunken white men. Before he could decide on a course of action, Catherine appeared in her doorway, a rifle steady in her hands. Turn around, Mr. Billings, she called out firmly. I treated your mother's consumption last winter, and I'd hate to have to explain to her why I put a bullet in her son. The men hesitated. Then the leader spat on the ground. This ain't over, woman. Your kind ain't welcome here no more. They wheeled their horses around and rode back toward the saloon. In that moment, watching her stand alone against 3 armed men, Taibu felt something shift inside him. The woman he had been sent to punish was not what he had expected. As he retreated to his camp for the night, the questions in his mind grew louder, more insistent. Who had really killed his tribesmen? And what would justice truly require? Dawn arrived with a blanket of mist hovering over Miller's Creek, offering momentary relief from the Texas heat. Taibu rose from his hidden camp, his decision made. He would approach the healer woman directly, read the truth in her eyes, then determine if she deserved Comanche justice. Catherine Parker was gathering herbs in the meadow beyond her cabin when she sensed a presence. Her hands stilled, but she did not run. Years of frontier life had taught her that showing fear often invited attack. I know you're there, she called out steadily, slowly turning to face the tree line. Show yourself. Taibu emerged from the shadows, his tall figure imposing in traditional Comanche garb, face painted for war. He carried no visible weapons, though Catherine knew he would be armed. Her breath caught, but she stood her ground. Have you come to kill me? She asked simply. Taibu studied her face, the clear blue eyes that met his without wavering, the set of her jaw that spoke of determination rather than fear. I come for truth, he replied in carefully practiced English. 3 Comanche warriors died near your home. My chief believes you killed them after they sought your healing. Catherine's eyes widened slightly. I did not kill them. I was miles away when they died. She hesitated, then added, Someone wants the peace talks to fail. Someone wants more bloodshed. Taibu circled her slowly, noting how she turned to keep facing him. Why should I believe you, yellow-hair woman? Many settlers hate my people. I hate war, not people, Catherine replied. I've treated whites, Mexicans, freed slaves, and yes, Comanche too. I took an oath to heal, not harm. She gestured toward her cabin. I have proof of what happened that day if you care to see it. Curiosity warred with caution in Taibu's mind. Entering her dwelling could be a trap, yet something in her manner spoke of honesty. After a moment's consideration, he nodded once. Inside the simple cabin, Catherine lit a lamp and moved to a small desk. From a drawer, she withdrew a leather journal and opened it to a specific page. I keep records of all my patients and journeys, she explained, turning the book so he could see the neat handwriting. That day, I rode east to the Peterson farm. Their children had fever. I didn't return until sunset, and that's when I found your tribesmen. She turned to another page where she had drawn a rough map. They were here, by the North Creek Bend. They'd been shot, not poisoned as some claim. Her voice grew softer. I recognized one of them. He had a distinctive scar on his forearm. I had treated him for lung sickness the winter before. Taibu's expression remained impassive, but his thoughts raced. The warrior she described sounded like Running Elk, one of the 3 missing men. This proves nothing, he said, though doubt had begun to creep into his conviction. No, it doesn't, Catherine agreed. But ask yourself who benefits from breaking the peace between our peoples. Not me. I live alone, vulnerable to attack. Not most settlers who just want to farm in safety. She closed the journal and looked directly into his eyes. The arms merchants, the land speculators, the soldiers who would lose purpose without war. They are the ones who gain. Before Taibu could respond, frantic knocking sounded at the door. Catherine opened it to find Thomas, the new father, his face pale with worry. "Miss Catherine, it's Mary. She's bleeding bad and burning with fever." Catherine grabbed her medical bag without hesitation. "I'll come now." She glanced at Taibu, making a swift decision. "You can kill me later if you choose. Right now, a woman needs my help." To Thomas's credit, he showed only momentary shock at the Comanche warrior in Catherine's cabin before his concern for his wife overshadowed all else. Catherine hurried toward the door, then paused to look back at Taibu. "Stay or follow. Your choice." Something compelled Taibu to follow. Perhaps it was the chance to observe the healer further, to determine her true character. Perhaps it was the growing unease about his mission. Whatever the reason, he found himself trailing behind Catherine and Thomas to their small homestead. Inside, Mary lay pale and trembling on the bed, the sheets beneath her stained with blood. The newborn infant wailed from a makeshift cradle nearby. Thomas moved immediately to quiet the child, while Catherine went to Mary's side. "How long has she been bleeding?" Catherine asked, her hands already working to examine the young mother. "Started again this morning," Thomas replied, his voice breaking. "The fever came on fast after that." Catherine turned to Taibu, her professional demeanor unwavering despite the unusual circumstances. "I need clean water as hot as possible." For reasons he didn't fully understand, Taibu complied, taking the bucket Thomas offered and filling it from their well before setting it to heat over the fire. As he worked, he observed Catherine's methodical care, the gentle efficiency of her hands, the soothing tone of her voice as she spoke reassurances to the frightened couple. Hours passed as Catherine battled to save Mary's life. She sent Thomas to fetch specific herbs from her stores. She instructed Taibu in how to maintain the proper temperature of the compresses she applied to Mary's forehead. When Mary began to shake violently, Catherine enlisted Taibu's strength to help hold her steady. "In my tribe," Taibu said quietly as they worked side by side, "we have medicine women. They say healing hands carry no weapons." Catherine met his gaze briefly. "Yet here we both are, with blood on our hands for different reasons." She returned her attention to Mary, whose breathing had finally steadied. "I think the worst has passed," she murmured, more to herself than to him. By nightfall, Mary's fever had broken. The bleeding had stopped, and she slept peacefully with her infant son cradled beside her. Thomas, overcome with gratitude, wept openly. "You've saved her twice now," he said to Catherine. "We have nothing valuable enough to repay you." "Your friendship is payment enough," Catherine replied, packing her supplies. She looked exhausted, dark circles prominent beneath her eyes. As they walked back toward her cabin under the star-filled sky, Taibu found himself supporting Catherine when she stumbled from fatigue. "You could have escaped while I helped them," he noted. Catherine gave a tired laugh. "To where? This is my home. Besides, I sensed you weren't certain about killing me anymore." They reached her cabin, and Catherine lit the lamp inside before turning to face him. "Will you kill me now, Comanche warrior? Or will you first find the truth about your tribesmen's deaths?" Taibu studied her in the soft lamplight, this woman who had worked tirelessly to save a life while under threat of death herself. "I am called Taibu," he said finally, "and I will find the truth before any more blood is shed." Catherine nodded, relief evident in her posture. "I am Catherine Parker." She hesitated, then added, "You can stay in my barn if you wish. It's safer than camping in the open with soldiers patrolling." That night, as Taibu settled in the relative comfort of Catherine's barn, he pondered the day's events. The woman was either the most skilled deceiver he had ever encountered, or she was exactly what she appeared to be, a healer caught in the crossfire of others' ambitions. Either way, something had changed within him. For the first time in many seasons, Taibu found himself questioning not just this mission, but the path of vengeance that had defined his life. The rising sun painted the eastern sky in vibrant hues of orange and gold as Taibu slipped silently from Catherine's barn. He had made his decision during the night watches. He would investigate the deaths himself before passing judgment. His people valued justice, not blind vengeance. Catherine was already awake, tending to her small garden when he approached. She straightened, brushing soil from her hands. "There's food inside if you're hungry," she offered, her tone casual as if having a Comanche warrior as a guest was commonplace. "I'm making rounds to my patients this morning." Taibu nodded. "I will come with you." Surprise flickered across her face. "People will be frightened. I will stay hidden, watch from distance," he clarified. "Need to see how settlers treat you. Need to understand." Catherine considered this, then nodded. "Very well. But first, show me where you found your tribesmen's bodies. Perhaps I missed something when I discovered them." After a simple breakfast, they rode out together. Catherine on her chestnut mare, Taibu on his paint horse. They followed the creek northward, the water's gentle burbling a counterpoint to the tense silence between them. "Here," Catherine said eventually, reining in her horse beside a cluster of cottonwood trees. "This is where I found them." Taibu dismounted, his experienced eyes scanning the ground. Though weeks had passed, he could still detect signs of what had occurred. Scuff marks in the earth, a darkened patch of soil where blood had soaked in, a broken arrow shaft half hidden among the roots of a tree. They were not ambushed, he concluded after careful examination. No signs of struggle or chase. He looked up at Catherine. They came here willingly, meeting someone. But who would they agree to meet? Catherine wondered aloud, dismounting to join him. And why here, so close to the settlement? Taibu continued his methodical search, moving in expanding circles from the central location. Near a fallen log, something caught his eye. A small metal object partially buried in the soft earth. He retrieved it, turning it over in his palm. "Army button," he stated, holding it up for Catherine to see. "Blue coat was here." Catherine's eyes widened. "Captain Reynolds? But why would your warriors meet with him?" "Not Reynolds," Taibu said with certainty. "Different mark." He pointed to the insignia on the button. "This belonged to cavalry, not infantry. Reynolds is infantry." Understanding dawned on Catherine's face. "Lieutenant Foster. He was the first to investigate the deaths. He took statements, but his report must have been deliberately misleading." She frowned deeply. "But what connection would he have to your tribesmen?" Before Taibu could respond, the distant sound of hoofbeats reached them. He melted into the trees with practiced ease just as a patrol of 4 soldiers appeared around the bend. Catherine squared her shoulders, facing them alone. "Miss Parker," the lead soldier called, raising his hand in greeting. "Bit far from your cabin, ain't you?" "Gathering herbs, Sergeant," she replied smoothly. "Some only grow along the creek." The sergeant nodded, but his eyes narrowed suspiciously as he scanned the area. "Thought I saw 2 riders heading this way." "Just me," Catherine said with a casual shrug. "Though I did see one of the Henderson boys hunting upstream earlier." The sergeant seemed satisfied with this explanation. "You should be careful out here alone, ma'am. There's been reports of Comanche scouts in the area. Lieutenant Foster wants all settlers to stay close to town." "I appreciate the concern," Catherine replied. "I'll be heading back shortly." As the patrol continued on their way, Catherine waited until they were out of sight before speaking softly. "Foster again. He seems to be at the center of everything." Taibu emerged from the trees, his expression grim. "Need to watch this Foster. See what he hides." They spent the remainder of the morning following Catherine's usual routine, with Taibu observing from a distance as she visited various homesteads. Everywhere she went, she was greeted with respect and gratitude, a stark contrast to the suspicion hinted at by Captain Reynolds and the drunken men from the saloon. By midday, they had reached the far edge of the settlement where a small military encampment had been established. From his vantage point in a copse of trees, Taibu watched as Catherine boldly approached the camp, requesting to speak with Lieutenant Foster about medical supplies for the settlement. A young soldier led her to a tent at the center of the camp. Minutes later, she emerged accompanied by a tall, lean officer with a meticulously trimmed mustache, Lieutenant Foster himself. Even from a distance, Taibu could sense the man's arrogance in his posture and gait. "I'm afraid I can't spare any more supplies, Miss Parker," Foster was saying as they walked toward the edge of camp. "We've already been more than generous with the settlement." "People are suffering, Lieutenant," Catherine replied. The children especially need medicine for fever. Surely the army can spare some quinine. Foster stopped, turning to face her with a cold smile. Perhaps we could come to an arrangement. I've always admired your dedication to helping others. Such dedication should be rewarded. Catherine took a step back, her posture stiffening. I'm not interested in any arrangement, Lieutenant. I'm only concerned with the welfare of my patients. Such high principles, Foster remarked with a sneer. Yet I wonder what the settlers would think if they knew the truth about the Comanche deaths near your cabin. Taibu saw Catherine's shoulders tense, though her voice remained steady. What truth would that be, Lieutenant? Foster stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that Taibu couldn't hear. Whatever he said caused Catherine's face to pale. She turned abruptly and walked away, her steps quick and uneven. When they reunited at a predetermined location well away from the camp, Catherine's hands were trembling. Foster knows something, she said without preamble. He as much as admitted that he was involved in the deaths, but he implied that I would be blamed if I didn't cooperate with him. What kind of cooperation? Taibu asked, his tone darkening. Catherine looked away. The kind no decent woman would agree to. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. But he also mentioned something else. He said the merchandise would be arriving tomorrow night, and that it would solve the Indian problem once and for all. Taibu's eyes narrowed. Weapons. He brings weapons. That would explain everything, Catherine said, her mind working quickly. If he's supplying weapons illegally, he'd want to sabotage the peace talks. And what better way than to create an incident that would inflame both sides? As they made their way back toward Catherine's cabin, they passed the saloon where Billings and his friends had gathered on the porch. The men called out crude remarks to Catherine, who ignored them with practiced dignity. But Taibu, watching from the shadows, noticed something telling. A brief exchange between Billings and a soldier who wore the insignia of Foster's unit. Money changed hands, and hushed words were spoken. That evening, as they sat in Catherine's cabin discussing what they had observed, a plan began to form. We need proof of Foster's treachery, Catherine said, pouring cups of strong coffee. Something that would convince both your chief and Captain Reynolds. Taibu nodded slowly. Tomorrow night when merchandise arrives, we watch, we witness. Catherine set down her cup, meeting his gaze directly. Why are you helping me? Yesterday you came to kill me. Taibu was silent for a long moment, searching for words to explain the change within him. My people believe in signs, in paths shown by spirits. He gestured to the space between them. This path was unexpected, but clear. And if we fail? Catherine asked softly. If we can't prove Foster's guilt, then we face consequences. Taibu replied simply. You with your people, I with mine. As night deepened around them, they continued refining their plan, two unlikely allies united by a common pursuit of truth. And if Taibu occasionally found his gaze lingering on Catherine's face, illuminated by the warm glow of the lamplight, he attributed it to nothing more than a warrior's assessment of an unexpected ally. A tension-filled silence blanketed the landscape as dusk settled over Miller's Creek. Taibu and Catherine had spent the day gathering information through careful observation and strategic conversations with townspeople. Their plan was set. They would intercept Foster's weapons delivery and expose his scheme to both the Army command and the Comanche tribal leaders. Hidden among the rocks overlooking the old mining trail, they waited. Catherine had exchanged her usual dress for more practical attire, trousers, a dark shirt, and a wide-brimmed hat that concealed her blonde hair. Beside her, Taibu remained as still as the stones themselves, his keen eyes scanning the terrain below. You still have not told me why you became a healer, Taibu said quietly, breaking the long silence between them. Catherine's gaze remained fixed on the trail. My father was a doctor. He taught me everything he knew. She paused, then added, After he and my mother were killed in a raid 2 years ago, healing others became my way of honoring them. Your family was killed by Comanche, Taibu stated rather than asked. Yes. Her voice held no accusation, only a deep sadness. A splinter group led by a warrior called Broken Hand. Not your band. Taibu nodded slowly. And still you treated Comanche who came to you for help. Hatred only breeds more hatred, Catherine replied. My father believed that healing transcends the divisions we create between ourselves. She turned to look at him directly. What about you? Have you always been a warrior? A rare smile flickered across Taibu's face. I was a troublesome child, always questioning, always watching. His expression grew more somber. When white soldiers killed my father, I found my purpose in protecting my people. Catherine started to respond when Taibu raised his hand for silence. In the distance, the faint sound of wagon wheels could be heard. They pressed closer to the ground, watching as a covered wagon escorted by 4 riders approached along the trail. That's Foster, Catherine whispered, recognizing the lieutenant leading the group. They watched as the wagon stopped in a small clearing. Foster dismounted and paced impatiently, checking his timepiece repeatedly. After nearly half an hour, 3 more riders approached from the opposite direction, Billings and his 2 companions from the saloon. You're late, Foster's irritated voice carried clearly in the night air. Had trouble slipping away, Billings replied. Reynolds has the men on extra patrols tonight. Foster grunted. Let's make this quick. The merchandise is all accounted for. 30 rifles and ammunition enough to arm every man in your group. And the payment? One of the soldiers asked. Billings dismounted and handed over a heavy saddlebag. All there, though I still say it's too much for old Army surplus. Foster laughed coldly. These aren't surplus, you fool. These are the newest repeating rifles. Not even our regular troops have them yet. He lowered his voice, though it still carried to the hidden observers. Once you've taken care of the Parker woman and made it look like Comanche work, use these to defend the settlement when they retaliate. Reynolds will have no choice but to request full military intervention. And you'll be the hero who warned about the Comanche threat all along, Billings concluded with a chuckle. Clever. But why not just kill the woman yourself? Too obvious, Foster replied. I need to maintain plausible deniability. Besides, you have personal reason to want her gone. Everyone knows you blame her for your brother's death. Catherine tensed beside Taibu. We have to stop them, she whispered urgently. Wait, Taibu cautioned. Need all the evidence, need to hear full plan. Below, the men had begun unloading crates from the wagon. Foster supervised as they broke open one crate to inspect the merchandise, gleaming new rifles that would give their users a deadly advantage over both the Army's standard-issue weapons and the Comanche's more limited firearms. Remember the plan, Foster instructed as they worked. 3 days from now, during the treaty meeting, the Comanche delegation will be camped at Eagle Rock. Once the alarm is raised about Parker's murder, their camp will be lightly defended. That's when you hit them, hard and fast. And you'll make sure Reynolds sends his men in the wrong direction at first? Billings confirmed. Foster nodded. By the time the confusion clears, the peace talks will be in shambles, and the territory commander will have no choice but to authorize a full campaign against the hostiles. Catherine and Taibu exchanged horrified glances as the full extent of the plot became clear. This wasn't just about weapons trafficking or personal vendettas. Foster was engineering a massacre that would restart a full-scale war. As the men below finished their transaction, Taibu touched Catherine's arm. We have seen enough. Now we must move quickly. They retreated silently through the darkness, making their way back to Catherine's cabin by a circuitous route to avoid patrols. Once inside, they wasted no time. I'll ride to Captain Reynolds at first light, Catherine said, gathering supplies. With what we've witnessed, he can't ignore Foster's treachery. Taibu shook his head. Too dangerous. Billings and his men will be watching for you. I will take word to my chief at Eagle Rock. Then together we approach Reynolds. They won't believe a Comanche warrior without me, Catherine argued. We need to go together. Their debate was interrupted by the sound of approaching horses. Peering through the window, Catherine gasped. It's Billings and his men. They've come early. Taibu moved swiftly to the back door. We leave now. Take only what you need. There's a tunnel, Catherine said hurriedly, moving to pull up a section of floorboards. My father built it as a shelter during storms. It leads to the creek bank. They had barely descended into the cramped passageway when the front door splintered open. Above them, heavy boots stomped across the wooden floor, as Billings and his men ransacked the cabin. Find her, Billings shouted. Foster wants this done tonight. Crawling through the narrow tunnel, they emerged in a dense thicket beside the creek. Taibu led the way, moving with silent efficiency through the underbrush until they reached the spot where he had hidden his horse. Catherine's mare, unfortunately, was still in the barn behind her cabin. "We ride together," Taibu said, helping her mount before swinging up behind her. "To Eagle Rock. My chief must hear of this betrayal." As they rode through the night, Catherine leaned back against Taibu's chest, drawing strength from his solid presence. "Why are you risking everything to help me? Your people might see this as betrayal." Taibu was silent for a moment, the rhythm of the horse beneath them filling the space between his thoughts. "When I watched you heal that woman and child, I saw what you truly are. When I heard Foster's plans, I saw what he truly is." His voice dropped lower. "The spirits have shown me a different path than vengeance." By dawn, they had reached the outskirts of the Comanche camp at Eagle Rock. Taibu was immediately recognized, and warriors surrounded them with weapons drawn, suspicious of the white woman he brought with him. "I must speak with Chief Stone Bear," Taibu announced in their native tongue. "I bring important news about the peace talks and a plot against our people." They were escorted to the chief's lodge where Taibu presented their evidence, with Catherine adding her testimony. Stone Bear listened gravely, his weathered face revealing nothing of his thoughts. "This woman was to be punished for killing our warriors," he finally said. "Now you say she is innocent?" "She is a healer who honors all life," Taibu replied. "The true enemy is this blue coat who would profit from our destruction." Stone Bear studied Catherine intently. "If what you say is true, many lives on both sides will be lost if we do not act." He turned to Taibu. "You believe in her words?" "With my life," Taibu answered without hesitation. The chief nodded slowly. "Then we will send messengers to Captain Reynolds. If he is an honorable man, he will listen." What followed was a tense day of waiting, as Comanche riders carried messages between the camp and the army post. By sunset, word returned that Reynolds had agreed to meet at neutral ground to hear their evidence. As they prepared to leave for the meeting, Catherine pulled Taibu aside. "If something goes wrong, I want you to know that meeting you has changed me." Her blue eyes held his steadily. "You've shown me that people can bridge the chasms between them, even when history and circumstance set them apart." Taibu touched her cheek gently, a gesture so unexpected it surprised them both. "In my language, we have a word for souls that recognize each other across the divide. Isa Tai. It means never truly strangers." The meeting took place at midnight beside the creek where the 3 Comanche warriors had been murdered. Captain Reynolds arrived with a small contingent of trusted men, his face stern but open to their testimony. Chief Stone Bear brought his most respected council members, while Taibu and Catherine presented the evidence they had gathered. Reynolds listened without interruption, his expression darkening as the full extent of Foster's plot became clear. When they finished, he stood silently for a long moment. "I've had suspicions about Foster for months," he finally admitted. "Supplies going missing, strange patrol patterns, reports that didn't add up. But this, he shook his head in disgust. "This is treason." With Reynolds now convinced, a new plan was quickly formulated. Rather than exposing their knowledge immediately, they would set a trap. The weapons delivery would be allowed to proceed, but when Billings and his men moved to attack Catherine's cabin, they would find themselves surrounded by both army troops and Comanche warriors working together for perhaps the first time in the territory's history. 2 nights later, the trap was sprung. Foster and his conspirators were captured with the weapons and incriminating documents. The lieutenant's face contorted with rage when he saw Catherine standing beside Reynolds during the arrest. "You should have died with those savages," he spat. "The only savage here is you," Reynolds replied coldly, ordering his men to take Foster away. In the aftermath, as dawn broke over Miller's Creek, Catherine stood at the edge of the settlement watching the Comanche delegation prepare to return to their territory. The peace talks would proceed as planned, with a new understanding forged through their shared effort to prevent bloodshed. Taibu approached her, his usually stoic expression softened by something new. Possibility. "My chief has asked me to serve as liaison between our peoples," he said, "to help build the bridge you spoke of." Catherine smiled, hope warming her heart. "There will be challenges. Not everyone will accept such a bridge. Not everyone needs to," Taibu replied. Only enough to make a beginning. He hesitated, then added, I would like to learn more of your healing ways, and perhaps teach you some of my people's medicine in return. Catherine's hand found his, their fingers intertwining in a gesture that crossed all boundaries of culture and history. I would like that very much. As the rising sun painted the sky in brilliant hues of promise, they stood together at the threshold of something neither had dared imagine, a future where the divisions between them served not as barriers, but as bridges to a deeper understanding. What had begun as a mission of vengeance had transformed into something far more powerful, the recognition that even in the harshest landscapes of human conflict, compassion could take root and flourish. And in that moment, as Taibu looked into Catherine's eyes, he understood why the old stories spoke of warriors who found their greatest strength not in battle, but in the courage to choose a different path.